Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me on the channel today. I'm Ted Yacucci. Well, this is a program that I am super excited about because we have a guest, and that guest is probably the one person among all others that I would like to interview about the JFK assassination because it is Bart Kamp, who wrote the book Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture, and is really an expert on whether that is Lee Oswald that's standing in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository. And we're going to talk to him now about Prayer Man and also about his efforts to get the Wegman and the Darnell films redigitized to digital, I should say digitized in order to put them in a format in which we might be able to really tell whether that is Lee Oswald standing in the doorway of the Texas School Book Depository during the actual motorcade and the murder of JFK, not on the sixth floor. Bart, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being on the channel with us. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you, Ted, for having me. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Good. Well, Bart, because there's so many on our channel, there's so many people that are really interested in the JFK assassination. Um, that and the excitement about Prayer Man, I think, because of your efforts, really is an all-time high. Um, but just in case we have some folks that are just tuning in and and don't really have an idea of who or what Prayer Man is, do you think you could give us just a little bit of background about who Prayer Man is, please?
Prayer Man is the name for a male individual who's caught in two two films made by Dave Weekman and by James Darnell. They were Weekman was in Camcar 1 and Darnell was in Camcar 3, who captured the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository. And on those front steps, we've got an individual standing in the corner in the shadow. And we believe, after long and hard research, that is Lee Harvey Oswald. It started with a picture, and this picture has been upgraded a little bit over the years. The first time I saw it was in about 1994 when I saw a documentary that came together with the Oliver Stone film, and something like JFK assassination: the question for conspiracy. I think that's what's roughly the title was. I might be wrong, but that's the first time I saw the bit of Marion Baker's dash towards the front of the Texas School Book Depository. And little did I know that after I saw the still and then also saw the film, I realized what I'd seen, and then I went, right, that's really interesting. But the most important aspect for me of this case is that people have really been trying very hard to how shall I say this, prove a conspiracy or prove that the Warren Commission is wrong. And in certain aspects, they've done that. But there's never been the killer blow that basically shows that Lee Harvey Oswald is actually innocent, because there are many facets of this case where basically Oswald is investigated deeply and where the evidence doesn't add up at all. The rifle, for instance. But I thought, you know what? If anything can just has the possibility to conclude that Oswald was innocent after all, then it's Prayer Man, because of his likeliness of that individual, but also afterwards during research about 6 to 10 years ago. We just managed to establish that there was evidence to support that assertion. So it wasn't just a picture, but it's like, well, hold on a minute, we've got a statement here. and these statements have been hidden for a long time. My conclusion is that from all the research that I've done, not just in the picture and the processing and how the film is being done, being filmed, and how handled and who's got it and so forth, I thought the search for the evidence was even more important. And from when I was a teenager and when I read a book, I used to read an author making a claim in a book and say, and this is because of such and such. And I'd be going, oh, yeah? Where'd you get that from? And then there would be a note in the back of that, in brackets behind it or on the bottom of the page. So I'd go to the back of the book and say, all right, such and such. Okay, this document, blah, blah, blah. Okay. With the internet, that's easier because you can go and visit the link. And I thought that was always a very important aspect, because when somebody makes a claim, yeah, is it an opinion or is it factual? Is it like evidence that we're talking about? And in this whole JFK game, there's a lot of speculation and opinionating, and I think and I believe and all that. So I became part of a club that's called ROKC, which is Reopen Kennedy Case, which is a forum which was led by Greg Parker. Right now, it's only there as an archive. And on that forum, there were like-minded people who were collecting evidence, and when there was a thread about a particular subject, everybody who knew whatever they knew would add it on. It was collective research, and then all of a sudden, things are starting to falling in place because of the evidence that was added on by these people. And with Prayer Man, it started gaining traction with Sean Murphy, and Sean Murphy did it first on the JFK assassination forum, which is just filled to the brim with people who believe in the Warren Commission scenario. And then it moved over to the education forum. This was in 2013. And I started to read about it in that year, but I wasn't really involved in anything until about late 2014, because I had a really stressy job that year. And only after I left that job, I started reading more about Prayer Man and getting deeper into it, and was of the opinion going, well, if you get this film properly analyzed, it might be a chance to actually do this. Now with today's technology, there's even more of a chance to actually do this. Artificial intelligence, sharpening techniques that already are used in Photoshop to an extent, but it gets much more refined. And this is also probably the main reason why they want to keep this under lock and key as long as they possibly can, because the whole danger of it, I mean, just think about the possible consequences. If that is Lee Oswald, then that's proof that everybody's just been talking fairy tales for more than 62 years. So,
Well, I just want to jump in. The book that your book, Per Man, More Than a Fuzzy Picture, really was the catalyst for me just becoming super interested because my independent research has been with Ruth and Michael Payne and with the Chicago plot. And in both of those cases, I felt like I was able to get pretty far. But this is something that for any JFK researcher, or not just a researcher, but for anybody interested in the JFK assassination at all, what you're doing here and what others have done, in the same sphere of research, like you just said, is really something that could just be the game changer, because both we're going to get into it a little bit here, but I just want people to know that the Prayer Man images that Bart is talking about come from two films, the Darnell film and the Wegman film, and they were 16 millimeter films shot by news reporters. So that's not, that's not that there's anything wrong with 8 millimeter, but in those days, a 16 millimeter film was the standard for everything that we saw on the television news every day. So the images, when they do get blown up, when they do get digitized, as we say, the quality really should be of such that it may very, very well tell us whether it is Lee Harvey Oswald standing in that doorway or not. So as Bart mentioned, it's what it really is, whether it's Lee Harvey Oswald or whether it is not Lee Harvey Oswald. What it does for all of us is to be able to move the dialogue, to move the conversation forward so that we know one way or another. But I have to say that after looking at the images and, after studying this thing for 40 years myself, I really believe that there's a really, really good chance that the images that Bart has put forth in his book, Prayer Man, More Than a Fuzzy Image, really is Lee Oswald. And I'm just gonna share the screen here for a second, and I just want to put up some I just want to put up some shots from Bart's website. Now, this first of all is where some people get mixed up. This person that you're seeing now is someone named Billy Lovelady who worked in the Texas School Book Depository, and he for a long time people thought that this was the image, the Lee Harvey Oswald image. Is that right, Bill? Is that right, Bart? That a lot of people really that even talk about Prayer Man actually are still thinking of this man and this image as Prayer Man.
Well, Prayer Man was discovered in '68, and this happened with Richard Burnaby. And Richard Burnaby was a professor in Canada. I forgot the city. Sorry. And he started corresponding with Harold Weisberg and with Richard Eastbrake. That's not Richard Eastbrake, but Richard Eastbrake. Richard Eastbrake they were actually both involved with the HSCA, but Richard Eastbrake left at the very beginning because he felt it was compromised. Richard Eastbrake was a specialist on obtaining as many pictures and films as possible regarding this. So I regard him as basically being on the forefront of going through the Vietman film. He didn't know about Darnell at that time. He went through the Vietman film to check the guy in the shadow. He was then called the man in the shadow. That's what it was called. This was based on the picture that was shot by James Olgins, which basically has Billy Lovelady in that photograph, leaning out and looking after the limousine while JFK has been shot in the throat. And you have some of the Secret Service agents looking back. And then there was this bit of the front steps of the Texas School Book Depository where a guy was leaning out and he had similarities to Oswald's face. And therefore, a lot of people thought it was him being on the steps. Based on that photograph, people started to look at, are there any films or photos shot at a different angle? And that's when the attention basically fell onto the Vietman film. And then the Vietman film showed that Lovelady left the steps while the shots were just finished, together with Bill Shelley, the foreman, and that there was a guy standing there in the shadow. So this is also when people started to try to deduct who's who and where are they standing and what place and so forth.
Right.
This then went quiet for a bit, from the '68 until the late teens, 2009 on the JFK Lancer Forum, and also was another gentleman on the Facebook that basically also got involved and started to bring this up and basically saw the still photo of the Darnell film and said, that guy looks like Oswald.
And we have on the screen now. Am I sharing
Yeah,
this? I hope. Yeah. Okay. Um, and if you can see my cursor back here now is the actual person that we are identifying as prayer man. Is that right?
correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay. And so the problem becomes, or the problem became that there was such a similarity between this man, the actual prayer man, and the Billy Lovelady photograph that I think a lot of people just kind of dismissed the whole idea that Lee Oswald could possibly have been there. And it wasn't until you guys actually started looking at these individual films, and not only that, but the progression as to where exactly the Wegman film was versus exactly where the Darnell film was. And then you guys were able to start actually identifying each person up on those steps. And you were able to identify where Billy Lovelady indeed was. And of course,
Yeah.
it wasn't Billy Lovelady there. This was an entirely different person that was standing there. Is that, do I have that kind of right?
You're pretty much spot on. It basically just became a game of deduction. Who's where did they say they were? And then everybody just started putting that together. And yeah, almost like very boringly put things in a spreadsheet and asked them where they were, in which statement did they say that where they were, and so forth. There's a document that's actually rubbished by conspiracy theorists, but it's actually an incredibly valuable document, which is Commission Exhibit 1381. This is a exhibit where all, I think, 74 people that worked inside the Texas School Book Depository were asked 5 or 6 questions. Did they see Oswald at the time? Where were they standing at that time? And so forth. So you already had a good idea, like people were gone for the dentist, they were away, they were shopping, or they were home sick, but also saying, oh, I went out, stood over there at alongside Elm, etc., etc. And then, of course, you have the statements by some of the people that were interviewed, that were taken in and that were interviewed, and what did you do, and what floor were you on, and so forth. So then you start getting evidence together. And that's when people started to look at, go, okay, we've got a rough idea who's who on the steps in the Wegman film, because there's about between 5 and 10 seconds difference between the Wegman and the Darnell film. But in that period of time, if you even think of the shortest time, 5 seconds, people can walk and step around a fair bit. And that is also what happened after the shots. People lunged down towards Elm to look what was going on, to see what's happened. That's really evident in the Darnell film and the Couch film. And then you've got the Wegman film, and the Wegman film has been used for so many documentaries of him running down Elm Street and then filming the Hesters and the I always forget their names, the witnesses that were closest by. And he films them lying on the grass, and then he films the Hesters hiding in the pergola. That film that film footage is very important, but it's actually the sequence before that, because Wegman actually shoots the front of the Texas School Book Depository twice. His camera swerving to the right twice, like that, and once is when he's very close, just before getting out. So you don't use that in combination with Dallas Police Department files, FBI files, Warren Commission files, newspaper clippings, interviews for magazines or the newspapers, and so forth. Anything that, just like for instance, Billy Lovelady said during that weekend or just after, and you collect all that, and then you start putting something together, and then you go all of a sudden go, hold on a minute, this is not as kosher as it should be. So this needs another look at. And then you start seeing discrepancies. And you get certain things off the internet where you just start to see a pattern. And then I was very fortunate to personally meet Malcolm Blunt. And Malcolm Blunt basically let me into his archives because he knew I had all of a sudden developed a serious interest. And it started all really carefully with, he said at me, "Oh, I've got about half a dozen tapes of interview tapes. Can you digitize them for me?" And I said, "Yeah, okay." Little did I know that afterwards there were about 300 cassette tapes that I've digitized. But at the same time, I also knew that he was one of the top guys who had been to the National Archives in Washington on several occasions and also for long periods of time, especially during the second half of the 90s and the noughties, so to speak. And he, I went through his stuff for about 2 hours, and I was shocked by what I saw because at that point, 2018, I had a fairly good comprehension of what was happening and what was going on. But every time I was like, I don't have this. Oh, this is beautiful. Oh, that's really, really good. Oh my goodness, that's really, really good. And I just realized, I said, Malcolm, I can't do just Harry Livingston, so I've got to do your archive as well. And he went, yeah, all right, okay, you can do that. And then it got even better because I found the Hosty note. And this is like the most important find of me. This is in the first week of Feb of 2019. When I found that, that was just such a whammy. And just like when I found out that I had handwritten notes written by James Hosty, and nobody had seen it or picked up on it except Harold Weisberg a little bit. But overall, these were notes that Hosty submitted to the National Archives before he actually released his book. And the story goes is that he was during the interview with Oswald. He's only been present during the very first interview of Oswald, from about 3:15 till about 4 o'clock on that Friday. And he goes after that interview while Oswald is being taken for his first lineup. He goes into the evidence room right next to it and goes through the stuff that's all been taken of Oswald. And this is where he gets a blank pad of affidavit paper, so all pre-printed. So he takes the back of it because it's blank, of course, whereas the front is all pre-typed. And he starts taking notes of what he finds in Oswald's wallet. And he also, on that same block, he writes a pre-report about what Oswald said during that interview. And that, in connection with Wilfrid's interrogation notes, which were given to the ARB in I think about 1996. Those two together, which were both handed over, yeah, that's one of them. Oswald stated he was present for work at the TSBD on the morning of the November 22nd, and at noon went to lunch. He went to the second floor to get a Coca-Cola to eat with lunch and returned to first floor to eat lunch. Then went outside to watch the presidential parade. So that document was so pivotal that and I was screaming it out in Malcolm's little archive because the finds that I had, that in conjunction with Wilfrid's notes, which were hidden from 63 late 63 till 1996. So yeah, 33 years, considerable time. And then also at that same year, technically, if somebody had paid attention to that and the other notes, then that would have been a very interesting bit to talk about, but it wasn't really picked up on. And then this document also wasn't really publicly available online. It was part of a folder that was just called Hosty. And
And Lee Oswald during the questioning from the notes stated that he went to the lunchroom, got a Coke, took his lunch outside and stood next to Bill Shelley to watch the motorcade go by. And that is exactly where you guys have him identified from your research. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it just became, like I said earlier, power of deduction. Where did everybody stand? You see, that person doesn't get any mention by anyone. Secondly, the what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought here for a sec. There are other people on the steps that also didn't get a mention. So Bill Frazier didn't get a mention. Joe Molina didn't get a mention. Carl Edward Jones didn't get a mention. So these people aren't mentioned either. Now, whether that's because Bill Frazier was hauled in to the police station as well, twice actually, that same day, and Joe Molina was branded a subversive on television, so that wasn't really a good thing either. And then, of course, you had Carl Edward Jones and also Roy Edward Lewis, and they were black. It was 63. The Jim Crow laws were about to be phased out, so there was still strong feelings about all that. So these guys also kept stum and didn't want to talk about matters, and it just became again, where was everybody? And then when we discovered that Shelley and Lovelady left the steps, this was happening in about 2012, and then the footage got better, and then I got a hold of a really good print of the couch film of that particular bit, and where the focus was on Lovelady and Shelley, that in conjunction with the evidence that was around, taught us to go and look more and more and more. And that's when I got hold of the Malcolm Blunt archive, and I just managed to fill more gaps in. And this is when I started to, Stan Dane started to do a book in 2015. And I said, well, I was going to do a book, but when he said he did it, I was like, okay, you go for it because you're quicker at it. And he went with the book in a direction that I wasn't going to go into at all. So I thought, well, that's okay. You do your thing, and I will do my own. And that it became this big. I never could have foreseen it. And in the beginning, because I was also involved with technology, I'm still am, but I then wanted to make an interactive document. So that would basically mean that, you know what I'll do? I don't write a book, but I'll put a Word or a PDF document together. And everything I claim is linked right there and then. You can click on it, or if you go, oh yeah, what's that about? The source, the click to the source is right there. And I did that, and I did in the end as 4 papers, 4 chapters, and they were released in 2022. And just when I released them, and I sent one of them to Malcolm Blunt, which was the interrogations one. His reply was, "You should do a book." And I was like, "Oh, great! I just finished these papers. Now you want me to do a book?" So, and I thought, of all the people actually getting me, prodding me, and going, "Yo, man, you need to do a book," I would have, Malcolm is the only one, because anyone else I would go away, I don't want to know about it. I've done this, I'm done. But he said, no, you should do a book. So I thought, okay. And I worked on that. I first took 2 or 3 months off, and then I started with the book in about the autumn of 22. And I worked on that until about end of April, early May 23. And then I had 3 hellish months to do the editing. I don't advise that to anyone, not even my worst enemies. I'm not kidding. Editing a book, it's terrible. Anyway, so did that. And then I released the ebook July 23, and the paperback arrived about, I think, late August or early September. And I was really surprised by the feedback. I thought, I'll sell 100 books and that'll be it, etc., etc. But what I did was I just stitched more than 1,220 sources together that gave me a timeline essence, because that's what's the most important part. And go, is there anything like a timeline going through everything? And when you start putting all these bits together, and it's actually quite a massive job, because you've just got this subterfuge of documentation. And every time you read something, you go, yeah, that piece belongs in that bit, and that piece belongs in that bit. It's like almost like collecting stamps and just organizing them. And then the book came out, and I was like, I don't even have to add my opinion to this because I think the evidence already speaks for itself. It's that simple. And that's what I did. I refrained from comments and just putting my own side to it and all that.
Wow.
Yes.
It's amazing, really. And, I don't want to jump ahead here, but not only did you identify, um, and categorize the timeline of, what I think is Lee Oswald standing on those steps there, but you also were able to actually identify, um, the image holding what doggone surely looks like a Coke bottle to me. And in one of the images, actually, even perhaps the lunch sack that Lee Harvey Oswald could have brought in with his sandwich that day.
On the
Uh,
steps, yeah.
Amazing. What did you think of when you first realized you had that?
You know, I'm a photographer, so I study photographs. And being a photographer, I think I'll just look differently, more intent, and see things quicker. Than it's no different than a plumber walking into your bathroom and looking and go, oh, it's that, like that. So that's me with pictures. It's just that I've got a trained eye. I've just been doing it for almost 40 years. So, um, and just looking at that, and also I've got a friend of mine who's a photographer, and he looked at it and went, "Oh, that's Oswald," just like there and then, right there and then, just goes, "Yeah, that's Oswald. It's no problem." So,
And in
and
this picture, that if I'm sharing this correctly, this is from the Wegman film,
yes,
if I'm correct. And if you look in the shadows there, there is what looks darn like a person to me, that the image of Lee Oswald, and this would be there. It's seen more easily in other photos, but this would be the area where he's holding the actual Coke bottle. Is that correct?
that's correct. Yeah, spot on. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I did a 1, 2, 3, because 1 is Oswald, 2 is Billy Lovelady, who's
Yeah.
actually motioning to go down, and number 3, which is I only discovered because I had a large scan of this particular image, which is a negative that came from the Richard E. Sprague archives, and that's Bill Shelley, and Bill Shelley is moving. So Lovelady was already stepping down, and Shelley was motioning to go behind him and also go down the steps,
Right.
which we then see later in the couch film, them together.
Yeah. So for everybody that's, still under the impression that Bill Lovelady is right here, this is the image that Bart's talking about. And we have it and he has it in other shots that are absolutely incredible. And being the jackass that I am, I've kind of lost them somehow on my desktop, but I will edit them in for the conversation here. But uh, it, to me, it looks like that Coke bottle. I don't know what else it could be if it wasn't a Coke bottle. I mean, it's the size of the Coke bottles that came out of the machine. It's got the Coke bottle label on it. That's obvious to me that that's what it is. Um, it's absolutely amazing. And you've got Bill Shelley that's really next to Lee Oswald, possible Lee Oswald figure. There in that shot that we looked at, he was starting to move a little bit, but he's exactly where Lee Oswald in the notes that Hosty took, and who was it?
Will Fritz, the Will
Fritz
Fritz notes.
that Fritz and Hosty took, he's exactly where he said he was. Um, that's amazing. That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, then there's also, of course, the so-called a lot, quite. Some people have said, "Well, nobody said he was there," and it's like, yeah, okay, but take a few factors into consideration. The people that were, first of all, the Dallas police wasn't 100%. I'm not saying that it was just Dallas. It was just policing in itself back
Hmm.
in the 60s was a lot more rough edged, taking shortcuts, and I'll just keep it like that at that. So people were afraid at that time. Those times there was a lot less oversight than there is now. On top of that, people were afraid for their jobs. The race thing, you can't forget about that. But then you take all these things and you go, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, it could be that these people were scared and they didn't want to talk about the fact that Oswald was standing there. But then you get the whole thing with Kent Biffle and with the guys who walked up to the steps to go in there, and they go, I thought I saw him. I could have sworn I saw him standing on the steps. And there is a sighting by Carolyn Arnold that she looked back and she thought she'd seen him. And you just start all these so-called possible sightings. Ovi Ockes Campbell, the vice president of the building, for some strange reason wasn't asked to come to testify for the Warren Commission, said on the first day at in an interview for the New York Herald Tribune on the 24th or the 23rd came out, and he said, like, yeah, we just saw him there in the room, just on the floor, on the first floor. And that was just, you start adding all these bits of all these so-called possible sightings. Then you start adding the statements to it. Then you start adding the film footage to it. It's not just a belief, oh, I see somebody in a photograph like Badge Man or all that malarkey from 35 years ago.
Right.
There is nothing to actually add on, say that.
Right.
To me, I'll tell you what, I've never seen Badge Man unless it was drawn in and with a gold star and all that. Because without it, I can't see it and I can't find it. So, and then some people say, oh, it's just another Badge Man. I'm going, no. This picture is only the ice. For me, the picture is going to be the icing on the cake. Strawberry on top, because the evidence already indicates what Oswald said where he was during his first interrogation.
Absolutely.
Actually, I found out recently. So I have to add this.
I look at the Carol Arnolds who she swore like 3 different times and told 3 different newspapers that she saw Oswald in the lunchroom getting a Coke or whatever he was doing, like 5 minutes before the motorcade passed. And and like you said, you put together all of these testimonies, and it makes perfect sense. Now, we do have the issue of Roy Truly, the building superintendent, saying along with who was the police officer that went with him? I can't remember.
Marion Baker.
Marion Baker, that they were, went into the building a couple of minutes after, 2 to 3 minutes after the shooting, and saw him on the second floor in the lunchroom. Well, to me, he could have gone back up there, first of all. I mean, what do you think about that?
It's a total fugazi. This is the first thing we did. Before I did Prayer Man, or started to dive into Prayer Man properly, I did the second floor lunchroom encounter. The lunchroom encounter has been questioned since Harold Weisberg did it. Greg Parker did it 25 years ago. And I always thought, in the official version, Roy Truly was walking ahead of Marion Baker, who had his gun drawn. And I go, God, picture this scenario. They're going up the steps in the northwest corner of the building, and the copper is standing behind the superintendent with his gun drawn. They're going up the stairs. What if somebody else would come down with a rifle or anything? Why would the superintendent risk his life to walk in front of them? And I was like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then I started looking into it. And when you start looking into Roy Truly's a liar. A very bad one as well. If you read his Warren Commission testimony, it's shocking how much he lies. And this is also in conjunction with the testimony of Bill Shelley and Bill Lovelady, who also lie on the oath and basically claim that they didn't leave the steps until 2 to 3 minutes after the shots had been fired. Whereas in other statements, first FBI statement for Billy Lovelady and the first DPD statement for Shelley, they said they left right away. So they were contradicting themselves to what they actually wrote in a sworn statement, in a DPD affidavit or an FBI affidavit. And, you know, you start putting these things together, and all of a sudden, it's like, you know, the funny thing is, like, if you're like avid stamp collectors, we actually are, you just dig into this and just get this little stamp in your collection. Yeah. You go, oh yeah, this is just amazing. That feel, that vibe, that's exactly what finding a bit of evidence that connects to what you already knew. You know, I've gotten to a point that in certain things, I'm almost going to go to, like, well, if I go to the archives, I know exactly what type of document I need to look for, because that will just confirm that what I was already thinking. That's that particular bit of the puzzle. That's how deep we got into it. And, you know, I had an accident and I ended up being immobile for a long time. So I ended up reading, because at first I was like, shall I go through every movie box set there's made to mankind, or am I just going to do this a little bit more fruitful, or get a bit more fruitful results by just actually digging into this stuff? That's what I did. My first paper was about the second floor lunchroom encounter, and I took it apart bit by bit, from the second he gets off his motorbike and runs towards the front, and then goes up the steps and everything. And I just chaptered everything as such. And that's what that particular chapter, I divided up over the other 3 chapters, because I had 4 papers. But for the book, I said, you know what, I'm going to turn it into 3 chapters. And the second floor lunchroom encounter, or the Fugazi, actually, is actually spread over those 3 chapters in its own way, in context with what I was writing already. That was quite a task to do, but all the more fun. But the paper I did for the second floor lunchroom encounter was, at first, was 80 pages long. Then it was 160 pages. And I'm going, 160 pages of stuff on just a scenario that was only meant to be 90 seconds or 2 minutes. And I was like, there's so much information about this. And this was also proved even more when I did the interrogations chapter on Oswald. In the second, he's basically waltzed in by the police into a holding cell. Excuse me. And that would prove to be an even more of a mammoth task, just to put that into a timeline fashion. And because there was so much stuff around, every time I looked somewhere, I found stuff. And I was like, gosh, yeah, I can put that on, and realized that the internet, that the information was actually too scattered, and nobody had made a really concerned attempt to say, let's put this together. Right. And that's what I did. You know what the funny part of all this is? Is that the majority of the evidence is the same evidence that the Warren Commission used, but then also decided not to use certain things. And then if you add the things of the HSCA and the ARB on top of it, you go, gee, it all makes sense. It all starts to make sense. The ARB neglected to investigate the Dallas part, which is a pity. The HSCA did a little bit. The funny thing for me about the whole case is that those commissions, especially the HSCA and the ARB, never really went deep into the Dallas part, the Dallas chapter. Right. They were more like, oh, well, just repeat. Is this correct what you wrote into your Warren Commission report? Like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Somebody had gone fishing, the other one wasn't available, etc. You know, things like that. It wasn't really taken seriously enough.
I've probably done 30 videos in which I reference affidavits or other materials that the Warren Commission either changed the information about or just totally ignored it. And if anybody needs if anybody still believes that anything that came out of the Warren Commission was valid, you know, Um, any good researcher could give you 50 examples of the Warren Commission totally actually changing testimony or eliminating testimony when it didn't fit their lone nut scenario. So it gets so frustrating that it actually gets almost humorous when you look at the when you look at the extent to which the Warren Commission actually went in order to hide pertinent evidence, including even asking the people, Daryl Tomlinson and others in Parkland Hospital, whether the bullet CE-399 was even actually the bullet. They never asked him that when they interviewed him or any of the other people because they knew what the answers, of course, would be. No, it wasn't the bullet that we found. So they knew all that stuff. Well, let me get into now just a little bit of why do you think NBC has been so reticent to release the frames that are being requested of them to digital? Why are they being so? Why are they withholding those films at this point? Do you have any opinion on that?
An opinion? Oh, I have an opinion on that. But so the way it started is that more than 10 years ago, we had somebody go to the archives for us, Terry Martin, and he went there and he got me those scans of the Vietman film. At the same time, we were also looking for Darnell. And Darnell was really secretive. Not Darnell himself, but the film. And we knew it was an NBC, but we didn't know like who, what, where, when, and what happened to the film and so forth. And only certain snippets start to come out. And then the Sixth Floor Museum got a copy of Darnell in 2008. And they didn't release that film, a digital copy of it, until, what was it, last year in August in 2024. So that's a really strange thing for keeping a film on the lock and key for 16 years. And they said, yeah, it's for Gary Mack said, yeah, it's for copyright reasons, and we'll get it out as soon as possible. Well, Gary Mack died 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it took him 9 years to release that film after his death. So this is a phrase that Malcolm Blunt uses. They keep kicking down the can. They
Sure.
keep kicking down the can down the road.
Down the
And
road.
I was like, yeah, I said, and you have that with the Central Intelligence Agency when it comes to releasing stuff, but it's with any institution. It just prolongs and waits and delays and processes and procedures and etc., and do their best to just slow it down. This is exactly happening with the film that we have now. And why they're doing it? Because the technology is there to de-blur that. They might have even had a go at them themselves. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. And therefore basically said, you know what, it'd be better not to get this film out because this is going to cause some upheaval. You see, here's the thing. If you kick the can down the road, at some point, they're all going to be dead. Anyone who's involved is going to be dead.
Yeah.
So that will happen in the next 5 to 10 years, okay? And because only some of the ladies are around, they're in their 80s, and I mean, 10, 15, 20 years, that's definite. So maybe then the film might come out. But until then, and then also, it won't cause that much of a ruckus, that much
Yeah.
upheaval,
Yeah.
because, oh, well, hey, everyone's gone now anyway.
Right.
So what's the difference?
Right.
And hey, that was the government back then. And hey, the CIA from the 60s isn't the CIA from 2025 or
Right.
2045. And so forth. And the FBI, rightly so, by the way. I mean, these organizations have adapted their methods and, you know. But whether it's going to come out, I doubt it. Ed Ledoux and Greg Parker, my colleagues from ROKC, started this whole thing up with the Luna Committee to request for the petition, and we got just over 1,000 signatures. which I thought that's okay. It's. I mean, I don't expect anything, but just say like, what we're trying to do is we want a concise request because the
Mm.
problem was so once this whole thing with the films started on April Fool's Day with the first hearing with the Luna Committee, and it was a bit of a circus, if I'm honest. Um, it wasn't really done in a concise manner. And because of that, we discussed it amongst ourselves and said, listen, we need to be guiding them and saying, listen, if you're going to ask NBC, ask it for this. And also, we had evidence. I mean, Jim Eugenio contacted me about, I don't know, 5 days before the committee. Yeah, late March, he contacted me and says, what have you got on the films on Viekman and Darnell? I said, okay, tell you what, I'll put something together in a couple of days, you'll have it. And I sent that to him, and he passed it on to Oliver Stone. And Oliver Stone basically brought it up. And some others have also opinionated about it. They're clueless, but they gave their opinion
Uh-oh.
regardless of saying, oh, it's first of all, you're no expert. Secondly, it's just an opinion. First of all, let's just look at this whole thing before we start opening our mouths. And but I'll tell you what, Ted, I'm like the CIA on this one. I say hope for the best, but I expect the worst.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's not going to happen. They'll just drag their heels, legal, this, that, and the other. What it needs is actually something that makes it go viral. And when the people, because this is how the ARB started, because the Oliver Stone film did
Right.
this. And then you had the JFK Act. And that's when the
Right.
documents started to come out, because we wouldn't have had that if that film hadn't happened.
That's right.
When Robert Groden showed the Zapruder film on the Geraldo show, same thing. The HSCA wouldn't have happened. Yeah, so now I'm not saying, oh, we need a committee. Oh no. No, I'm saying we need to get all this stuff out in the open.
Yeah.
We don't need any more control. We don't need another committee. You need to release all the documentation and all the films and the photos
Yeah.
that are in storage and need to become publicly available.
Yeah.
I mean, under the Biden administration, they said you need to scan all this in. Now, I'm confident they've done that already to a large extent, but it's the releasing process that's just going to take
Yeah.
ages. This is the same thing with the FBI documents, where people made mention of that 2,400 FBI documents had been found, and they were going to get released. I still haven't seen them.
Yeah.
How long does it take to scan in 2,400 pages? This whole thing with the government shutdown. Of course, that doesn't work because the archives are closed, so you can send all your emails. Now that they're slowly getting back together again, they'll just have a subterfuge of requests, and I don't know how many thousands of emails requesting material. So it doesn't make it all any easier at all. And yeah, we'll
Well,
see how it goes. I mean,
I've kind of felt that 2026, and again, I've felt exactly the way you just described, but I have felt the 2026 could be a breakout year. And the reason I say that is because there's so much political upheaval that's going to happen with the whole Epstein thing and everything else in 2026 that I have some hope that some of this stuff might get released just in order to take off some of the emphasis and some of the focus on some of these other topics. So
it's possible.
anyway, I do have some
It's
some
it's
hope.
quite possible. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I just I hope for the best, but I expect the worst. That's like I said. It's
You know what I
just
was totally disappointed in is you mentioned Jim DiGenio and Oliver Stone. I don't know if you saw the ABC documentary program that came out about 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. And
I haven't had the time yet.
it was, don't waste your time if you don't want to get frustrated. I'll warn
Yeah,
you.
they said it was like the first
Oh my goodness.
like
It's
Warren
something from
Commission.
50 years ago where none of the pertinent questions are asked. It's just like taking the Warren Commission report verbatim as gospel truth. It's almost unbelievable that they would do that at this point. And you have to ask yourself, well, what was the rationale? What's the reason that they would do something that unbalanced? And I don't know the
Status
answer to
quo.
that.
It's the status quo. Just keep it going because let's just go for the nightmare scenario. Or for me, very good, but for them, okay.
Mhm.
So let's just think. Let's just hypothesize, and that's basically this. Say the film comes out, we're going to pull out an 8K scan of it. Then we're going to get artificial intelligence on it. Then we're going to deblur this thing. Then it starts to look like Oswald. Now imagine this. It's Oswald standing there. What does that mean? Well, he didn't shoot Kennedy. Right. Then the question goes, well, who did? Yeah, we don't know that. Oh, but did you investigate? No, because Oswald was the guy. So we're going to get a vicious circle. And then on top of that, it's not going to gain anything. And then the conspiracy will come out in full force. And you see what I said 20 years ago, and they're all involved in this. That. Now,
Yeah,
just think about the deck of cards that's standing right now. And
yeah.
now me and a few others have basically pulled that all important card from the bottom, and the whole thing just comes tumbling down. What good is that to society? What good? I mean, I'll say, yeah, we learn from it, but we don't.
Well,
And
what
that's why I don't think the film is going to come out.
I've been telling people that what I think is going to happen eventually, before too long, is that the CIA will state um, that they've now decided that there was a very limited hangout, a very limited amount of um, folks that were out of control from the whole Western Hemisphere, Mexico City group, and they'll try to just kind of, throw it all on them. And it was just a very limited amount without any, they'll just, what they always do, basically. But I think that the one thing that I do hope that all of this stuff ends up doing is convincing people of the need for oversight and oversight, especially in every government committee that is making decisions about what happens on foreign soil. And that's my one goal of what good could come out of this whole thing at this point is that I think that sooner or later, and I could be all, way too optimistic on this, but I just believe people in America will wake up and say, we first of all have to get back to having oversight. And then secondly, we have to have some kind of campaign finance reform so it's not just buying whatever politician and their viewpoint that you can afford. So that at least is, and I could be, pie in the sky Wizard of Oz stuff, but that's my hope that the JFK, the whole assassination, the whole mesh some good will come out of it at the very end. Who knows?
One can only hope. I'll tell you that. I
I know.
mean,
I
I
know.
see. The thing is, I have no emotional involvement in any of it. Kennedy, nice guy, looked all right. Tried to do a couple of good things. Um, you know what? He's the guy who he peeved off a lot of people basically, and they decided to get rid of him.
Yeah,
And it's like the employee that's always right with certain things, and is almost gonna blow the whole thing wide open and makes him very unpopular because everybody else is earning very handsomely out of that. Well, there you go.
that's right.
Something like that. That's a
That's right.
similar situation where you're looking at. And I always wanted to do. I mean, I did Kennedy research before that. I decided to focus on the Texas School Book Depository after I read Barry Ernest's book, The Girl on the Stairs.
Yeah.
And because I read it through really quick in 2 days, I finished the whole thing. And I was like, okay, 2 afternoons. And I thought, like, started to look around on the net, and then I realized, like, there's not much around of this stuff. Actually, we need to dig into this. And
Right.
this is also one of the chapters that I did, where I discussed the Texas School Book Depository employees or publishing companies who were inside that building at that time of the shooting. And those are mega, mega interesting as well. And also messing around with who was where and what did they do and at what time and so forth. And again, it adds another layer to the whole Oswald being the shooter enigma, and where there's many more voices have basically have sprung up and said, like, oh, hold on, this doesn't rhyme. That guy says this, that guy says that. It doesn't add on. And now we've got Oswald's notes, etc., and then slowly the picture starts to emerge. What actually happened inside that building? I still don't know about the shooter and how he got. I personally think there was no shooter on the 6th floor. I don't think so. I think the shooter was in the Dell Tex building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah.
Scope. Yeah, the rifle was dumped on the 6th floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the actual shooter, for me, is in the Dell Tex.
Yeah.
At the best thing, it would be that somebody fired one shot from that window.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they were hoping for.
Not three.
Yeah.
Whereas I think, like, because the Dallas police took pictures on the 23rd of a sniper setup on the 3rd or the 4th floor of the Dell Tex building, and you just see the street, and you just go like Elm Street down, and you go, this is perfect. It's unbelievably cool. Whereas the 6th floor, it's got this window, it's got these heating pipes right next to it. Yeah. So those, which basically make a right-handed shooter really uncomfortable shooting down. And you've got these two big, what are they? 3-inch pipes, heating pipes, right there next to that bit of the window in that so-called sniper's nest. I was like, that is already you would have to lean out more. And then, of course, there's the live oak in front of it where he had to shoot through that.
Yeah.
But by some miracle, he manages to do all these wounds and the headshot. Oh, it's amazing. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So building 7 right in front of you, right there. So you just go, hold on a minute. How does this add up? Science can't do this.
Exactly.
Scientifically. It's only by belief and by opinion. And that's when you get a senator like Arlen Specter just coming up and just saying, oh, it went like this and like that and just going like that. And then it holds in the air for a second and a half and then it goes into the ring. And it's like, yeah, but what do you have scientifically to support that?
And you know what?
Absolutely nothing.
In that ABC presentation I was telling you about, Dale Myers says that it's that whole magic bullet is now fact. It's definite. There can be no discussion that it wasn't real. I mean, that's how bad that ABC program was, that they actually have someone saying that,
It's all done deliberately.
Crazy.
It's all done
with
an agenda. The whole thing is done with an agenda. I will watch it because I watch all of them, all the documentaries.
Yeah.
Because I also want to see if they got any footage that's more interesting.
Right.
And I go,
right.
Oh, yeah,
right.
I don't have that. Oh, right, okay. Because that's one thing. I'm still searching for footage on Oswald in the corridors of the DPD because I've got some footage where there's no audio. And I've tried a couple of people to see what he was saying by lip reading, but they weren't that successful with it.
Interesting.
And
stuff.
I really like to get hold of this stuff because that stuff actually takes care of like fills in gaps
Yeah.
and also confirms time
Yeah.
frames.
Yeah. Well, Bart, I can't thank you enough for being with us today. This has been tremendous, and like I said, I very rarely, after researching this thing for a long time myself, and really for the last 2 years after I've kind of retired. But this gets me really excited because I think that it could be one of the. I think the blow ups of those stills. It really could show that it was Lee Oswald and what a lot of people have been fighting for, at least to say that it wasn't him on the sixth floor, even if it never goes any further than that. I think that that would be just tremendous. So thank you so much. And please,
You're most welcome.
I'll reach out to you. Let's stay in touch. Please let us know, any kind of research that you have going on.
Oh,
And
I'm going to work on some bits, but it's not going to happen until next year.